Well, one thing that I feel pretty good about, which was maybe the only real insight in the Civium arc that I think is solid, is that I propose that we are living in the first moment in the last 10,000 years where there was a binding in the context of the city, which then became this whole of civilization, right? The whole of civilization, from my point of view, is in some sense the city and its adjuncts. So there's a binding between the work of the noosphere, the work of generative creativity, of which technology is a piece, and the work of human living. So humans lived in cities, and we were concentrated into this highly artificial environment because we needed to get people in close proximity to get the most out of our collaborative capacity. But we now are living in an environment where that binding is no longer obligatory. For the very first time, perhaps, in ever, where we can do the thing we're doing right now. Like, I don't live near you, and yet we're talking. And that opens up a lot of interesting possibilities, because now I can do the old render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and render unto God what is God's. I can actually do both of what you just said. I can focus my time and energy and attention on regenerating my embodiment and my human relationality with other people in sort of an embodied fashion by choosing to do so, like putting myself in a context and investing vertically in that context. And I can also orient my time now to a more, let's say, pure is the sense of it, like a more clear or clean generative collaboration. And there's a reciprocal support. Right? As I'm actually more grounded, embodied, healthy, less anxious, I'm more met in lots of different ways. But I'm not projecting that into the technological realm, trying to get my sort of, let's say, I have an ordinary relationship need, but I'm not getting it met in the embodied. So I'm going to project it over here and invent, whatever, some fucking AI thing that's ultimately highly dysfunctional, but because I'm trying to ask it to solve a need over here that's not being met, and that kind of a thing. If I can actually be a healthy human, I can maybe participate in the collaborative development of healthy technologies, or at least relate to technologies in a way that is healthy. You get the distinction there? Like moving at a pace that really works?
I think coordination failures in general are solved with new forms of articulacy. So one of the amazing powers of language is it lets us cohere around, some conceptual thing that could conceivably be good for all of us. And one interpretation of intellectual history is that we've struggled at different points and then developed some new set of concepts that allow us to kind of talk to each other and set a course in a more sophisticated way. And that's kind of like what Ellie and I are trying to do with meaning and values is that we think that if we can become articulate on this kind of new level, then there's a whole family of coordination failures we can fix.
Like current governance, we call like democracy, and it means like, oh, we put this kind of like paper in a vote like every 4 years, and like, hey, no, you're like heard. Obviously that, that's not ideal. But we think, okay, like what are the things that like make governance meaningful, or kind of like what are meaningful experiences that we've had in coordination? And then we try to kind of like get really granular on what these things are. That's kind of like our method for like values elicitation. That comes from kind of like lived experiences. I think that's very important. It's not just kind of like a pure kind of like abstracted ideology, but comes from things that people are already doing. And what we envision as this kind of like coordination and future of governance is like having people have like really high resolution profiles of their like meaning profiles, like things that they care about, and voting in kind of like situations, in situations where instead of voting, kind of like doing like deliberation, and them kind of putting arguments and morally, for example, like morally contentious questions on, is abortion right, or like how should we govern this situation, instead of kind of like just staying at the argument. Want to have like people from like different ideological backgrounds or like cultural backgrounds input their arguments and things that they care about, and from that elicit the underlying values in the way that we define them.
About our current financial system.